Yes, this is part 2 of a Coraline theory. So if you have not seen part 1, go ahead and watch that first, or else you're gonna be so confused. But if you've seen part 1 to this theory already, why don't we just get started? So in my last video, we found out the sad reality of the Beldam's backstory. We discovered that the Beldam is actually a changeling. She was abandoned by her fairy parents, but she knows this. She knows that she is not human. But like I said, most changelings that know this information grow up to be evil, and that's what she was doing. She was manipulating men and hurting them terribly until she met Tom Keats. And Tom Keats was the love of her life, and he felt the same way about her regardless of her past. Except we all know that Tom Keats fell ill with tuberculosis in 1818 and died that same year. Now, humans are not immortal, but it is widely believed that humans do have souls, and regardless of their short time on Earth, their souls get to live on for as long as we know. Now, fairies aren't immortal as well. They also die, except they have a longer lifespan. The thing is, fairies do not have souls, and the Beldam knew this. She knew that once she died, she would never be able to see Tom Keats ever again, which filled her up with devastation. She knew she had to do something about it. And that's where we left off. So in this video, we're really gonna get into the timeline of things because timing is really important when it comes to theories. We have to know if it matches up with the events in Coraline. So let's start off with what we know. We know that Tom Keats passed away in 1818 at the young age of 19 years old in England, making the Beldam around 15 to 19 years old. But for the sake of this video, I'm just going to say that she was 16 years old in 1818. And in 1819, the poem La Belle Dame sans Merci was written, and in 1820, it was published. Now let's fast forward 39 years later, in 1859. Now what happened in that year? Well, Oregon was founded. But why does that matter? Well, the Pink Palace lies in Oregon, and I have reason to believe that the Pink Palace was built in that same year. Now, if the events in Coraline actually take place in the same year that the movie was released in 2009, then this would make perfect sense because Coraline's father says in the movie that the house is 150 years old. Well, 2009 minus 150 is 1859. Okay, so now we know when the Pink Palace was built, but that still leaves us with a 41-year-old gap between John Keats' death and the construction of the Pink Palace. What happened to the Beldam during that time?
They say even the proudest spirit can be broken with love.
So there is something in the book that was not mentioned in the movie that really caught my attention.
She just loves something to eat.
In the book, it makes it so clear that the Beldam is not after human flesh. That is not what she wants. She is after magic, and she even goes as far as to kidnap a fairy to obtain this magic. But I know she did not do this only one time. I am so sure that she did this countless of times, especially during that 41-year gap. And there are so many reasons why she would do this. I mean, remember, she is a changeling, so she did not grow up with fairies. She either grew up with humans or they abandoned her as well and grew up by herself. So everything she would have learned from fairies, she had to learn on her own. And the best way she could do this is kidnap fairies, observe them, and force them to teach her their ways. She wanted to learn more about her background and where she came from. She also wanted to learn what type of abilities she possessed and what she is capable of doing. Yes, I do believe that this was because of a spark of curiosity within herself because she is a changeling after all. But I think her biggest motive was to be able to try and find a loophole, to see if she could see the love of her life once more. And okay, it may seem a little far-fetched to say that she was doing research for 41 years. But remember, fairies have a long lifespan, from 1,000 to 1,500 years. So 41 years is not really that long of a time for her. And to be honest, this woman, even in the movie, seems to be so determined to get what she wants. So to say that she did an intense amount of research for 41 years does not seem unlikely.
You're not sewing buttons in my eyes!
Oh, but we need a yes if you want to stay here.
So for 41 years, this woman captured fairies, researched them, learned about her own capabilities, and practiced them. And then she developed a plan.
Why are you all here?
The Beldam.
Since she did not have her own soul to be able to see the love of her life again, why not steal somebody else's? And she thought long and hard about how she would be able to do this. I have no doubt in my mind that she tried to do this various of different ways with even adults in England, but I don't think she ever found any success there. That's until she heard about this pioneer paradise where the soil was perfect for gardening and there was no diseases. A little place called Oregon. And many people were migrating to Oregon. And the Beldam thought, hey, there's free land and there's tons of people. Why not move to Oregon and build a palace where I can lure people in? But during her time there, she realized she would not have any success with adults. So she changed her strategy up. Instead of targeting adults, she targeted children, because they are much more gullible. And so she built a portal to a different dimension. And between 1859 and 1952, she was able to capture 2 children. And we all know what she did with these 2 children.
She lured us away with treasures and treats.
They say that the eyes are the window to the soul, which is why when she killed these 2 children, she took their eyes away and hid them so that their souls could never escape.
Find our eyes, mistress, and our souls will be freed.
The reason why the Beldam... Oh my god. The reason why the Beldam has buttons for eyes is because she probably most likely needs some sort of a link to connect herself with the victim's souls. She sacrificed her own wild eyes to see the love of her life again. And in 1952 is when YB's grandma moved in to the Pink Palace at 9 years old. And as we all know, the Beldam does succeed in capturing the grandma's twin. But this is really what sparks the events in the movie of Coraline to occur. Because YB's grandmother knows everything that happened. So she makes sure that she grows up in that house until she is old enough to divide this Pink Palace into an apartment complex. And she only rents it out to people who do not have children. So YB's grandmother is the Beldam's true enemy. But now let's move on to talk about Mr. Bobinski.
My new songs go oompa, oompa.
So in the movie, we can see him wearing a medal, and that medal is only given to liquidators who were in the Chernobyl disaster in 1986. The Chernobyl disaster was caused because of a nuclear accident that occurred in the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, which I can only assume traumatized Mr. Bobinski. The only way they could put the fires out was with sand. Yes, with sand. And after the accident, I'm sure Mr. Bobinski wanted a fresh start. So he moved from the Ukraine to the Pioneer Paradise. And there, he found a place to rent. The Pink Palace. All throughout the movie, we know that Mr. Bobinski communicates with his rats.
Demised asked me to give you message.
But how can this be? animals cannot talk in the real world. The only place we know of that animals can talk is in the other dimension. So how is Mr. Bobinski talking to the rats? Well, that's because when Mr. Bobinski moved into the Pink Palace, he actually met the Beldam. And that's when they made a deal. If Mr. Bobinski can get the Beldam some of that radioactive sand, then the Beldam will promise him immortality. Because after the disaster, Mr. Bobinski was terrified of death.
Do not go through little door.
And yes, Mr. Bobinski did warn Coraline, but everyone knows that children do what they are told not to do. And this is exactly what Mr. Bobinski wants. He wants to spark Coraline's curiosity into doing what she isn't supposed to do. Okay, let's backtrack for a little bit. According to the movie, YB is 11 years old. So that would mean YB was born in 1998. And once YB was old enough for the Beldam to lure in, the Beldam started threatening YB's grandmother with the doll. She made the doll to look like YB. And YB's grandmother knew exactly what this meant. But after years of torture and years of trying to get YB to stay away from that house, she finally gives the Beldam what she wants. A family with a child.
Grandma.
Okay, so I was going to end the video there, but while I was recording, I came to the realization of something big. Something that fills a plot hole in my theory. This whole time, I couldn't figure out why the Beldam needed so many souls, but I finally understood why. And it all has to do with Mr. Bobinski and the fairies that she captured. So Mr. Bobinski gave the Beldam radioactive sand to create other characters in this other world, like the other YB and the other Mr. Bobinski. But what about him? And what about them? They are not made up of sand. What are they? I believe that these could possibly be the fairies that she has captured, and they are there because the Beldam promised them souls as well. And currently, she has only 3 souls, but there are 4 of them. There's the other mother herself, the other father, the other Miss Spink, and the other Mrs. Forcible. Which is why she needed more than 1 soul. If she would have captured Coraline, her mission would have been accomplished. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe. It's just a button, but it would really help me out. In the meantime, do you agree with this theory? Do you disagree? What are your theories? Let me know in the comments below.
Every morning you wake me, it's way too early, but I don't care, you're not faking, your hair so curly, kiss in my face, you're amazing, you swear too often,